I didn't think my drawings connected with anyone. Then a teen stood in front of my table, stared for 5 minutes, and whispered something I can't forget. I used to draw during lunch breaks when I worked at this sad little office supply store across from the bus station. It smelled like dust and printer ink, and my manager once asked me if I could make the signs look a little more fun with highlighters. That was the gig. Nobody really came in and my shift was long, so I'd quietly sketch in the back room, receipts, cardboard, whatever I could find. That's when I still believed a portfolio meant something. That if I just kept drawing, kept showing up to open calls and group shows, someone would see me. It was naive, I guess, but it kept me breathing. And honestly, I miss being that stupidly hopeful. Now I just feel like I'm leaking. Time, energy, money, it's all just draining out faster than I can patch it. I have 3 jobs now. One's delivering groceries at night. Another is freelance layout work for this guy who communicates in emoji and panic. The third is a part-time gig at a ceramic studio, which sounds nice, but mostly I scrub clay off the floor and unload kills that aren't mine. My art sits in a milk crate by my mattress. I can't remember the last time I picked up a pencil without guilt attaching itself to my fingers. It's not that I stopped liking art. It's almost worse than that. I still love it, but it feels like loving someone who doesn't love you back. Or maybe someone who doesn't know you exist. Last week, I had a small breakdown in the walk-in cooler of the grocery store I deliver for. It came out of nowhere. I was loading pints of overpriced vegan ice cream into these compostable bags, and I just sat down. Right there, on the back step by the beet greens, and I cried like my ribs were folding in. Not even for a reason I could name. Just this building ache I think I'd been ignoring for too long. Anyway, that's why I'm writing this. Not to ask for advice, really, just to get it out. Because I don't know how long I can keep this version of myself alive. The hybrid mutant who's tired before they've even started. Who resents the jobs that pay, and the art that doesn't. I feel like I'm failing on both fronts. My partner, well, ex now, we split 2 months ago. Nothing dramatic, no big fight. Just this steady erosion. They were supportive, sure, but I think at some point they stopped believing the art side would work out. And maybe they're right. It's a mess trying to love someone who's constantly torn about their own self-worth. I don't blame them. I probably would have left me, too. I'd be lying if I said I didn't hear my dad's voice in my head every time I think about quitting. Art is a nice hobby, but it's not survival. He said that when I turned down the job at that insurance office after college. Said he wouldn't help cover my rent, just so you can doodle on fruit stickers and call it expression. The man worked 35 years as a plumber without a break longer than a weekend. He doesn't get doing things just for the sake of joy. But this isn't just joy. It's not a coloring book thing. Creating was the only thing that made me feel plugged into something, not divine, but true. And I don't even know what truth looks like anymore when I can't afford to update my bus pass. It's not that I expect success to just appear. I know the numbers. I know making it in the art world is like trying to win the lottery with a crayon drawing of the ticket. And yeah, I've tried. I've sold prints on Etsy. I built the newsletter. I got the blurry interview feature in a grassroots scene that accidentally spelled my name wrong. Twice. I do the pop-ups when I can afford the table fee. But at some point, you start wondering if this hustle is hope or delusion in a fancier outfit. Sometimes I fantasize about giving it up completely. Like all the way. Sell the supplies, delete the accounts, turn off that horrible guilt loop forever. Maybe I'd be lighter. Maybe I'd sleep better. Maybe I'd be boring. But stable. But then I'll see something. A half-torn flyer on the train with a striking font. A kid drawing with chalk alone on the sidewalk. The way foam looks when it dries accidentally across a tile. And it's like this little animal inside me cranes its head up again. Like, see? Look. Look how alive that is. And I'll think for a second, maybe I still belong to that. But then my phone will buzz and it'll be a misshift or a passive-aggressive message from a client who wants the design to pop with zero budget, and that tiny flicker inside me just folds back down. I don't even know what I'm chasing anymore. Recognition? Stability? Or just the permission to keep trying? I keep a box under my bed with all the rejection letters I've gotten over the years. Some are form emails I printed out. Others are handwritten post-its from gallery curators who said things like, "Love your line work, but doesn't fit this season's theme." Occasionally I reread them like a weirdo. Not to wallow, but to remember that I did try. I'm still trying. Even if it's quiet. Even if no one's clapping. And maybe that's the hardest part. Doing it anyway. Fully aware that no one may ever care. No paycheck, no spotlight, Just doing it because something inside you refuses to die. Last Sunday, I got into a weird argument with myself while folding laundry at the laundromat. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say, but here we are. I'd spilled detergent on my jeans, and I was trying to calculate how many hours I'd need to work to buy a new pair, like an actual $2 breakdown. And this voice in my head, mine probably, just blurted, "Why the hell are you still trying to be an artist?" And I didn't have a good answer. I just kind of stood there, holding wet denim, thinking about how brutal it is to want something so much when it gives back so little. Or maybe better said, when it gives back in weird, non-monetary, confusing ways that don't help you pay rent or buy groceries, but somehow still make you cry in public. It's like wanting to date someone who's emotionally unavailable but occasionally sends you beautiful letters from across the globe. You know they're never going to show up with groceries or walk your dog or hold your hand in traffic, but the letters, they're always perfect. And so you wait. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I lit the candle that smells like pencil shavings and lemongrass. Don't judge. It's weirdly nostalgic. And I opened my sketchbook. Not for a client, not for call for entry, just because. I was too tired to overthink what came out, and I think that made it better. It wasn't pretty. At all. But it felt real. Messy, a little frantic. Like letting my brain talk without subtitles. I fell asleep with my hand still touching the page. Woke up with graphite smeared across my forearm like a faint tattoo. For the first time in weeks, I didn't wake up dreading the next 14 hours. I know that doesn't solve anything, but it reminded me that I'm still in there, somewhere. Under the burnout, under the constant micro-panic of paying late fees and forgetting client invoices. In there's still this raw little ember of wanting. I talked to my friend Rowan about all this a few nights later. We used to go to art school together, back when we thought being poor was romantic, and every drawing had to mean something. Rowan's still painting, somehow, but he teaches now, and I think that saved him from the hell of total instability. I envy that, structure without giving it all up. I've never been good at structure. I always treated day jobs like costumes I had to put on so I could sneak back to my real life once the shift ended. But lately, it started to feel like the costume's permanent, and the real parts slipping away. "I think you're grieving," Rowan said, after I told him about the beet cooler breakdown. "Grieving what?" I asked. "The version of yourself where art didn't hurt," he said. "The version where it was still pure." That hits so much harder than I expected. Because yeah, that's exactly what it is. I'm in mourning. Not just for the work I'm not making, but for me, the me who could make it without feeling guilty or tired or compromised. The me who could binge a weird gallery exhibit and walk out high on possibility instead of terrified that I'll never do anything close. I still go to museums sometimes. Not often. I have a student ID from years ago that sort of works at some of them if the front desk doesn't look too hard. It feels like sneaking into a church I don't belong to anymore. I'll stare at something until it dissolves into color and texture, until it stops being a masterpiece and just becomes what it is. Someone else's breath stretched into pigment. It's the closest thing I have to prayer. And still I leave angry. Angry that I don't hate it yet. There's a part of me that wants to hate it just to end the push and pull. Life would be simpler. I could be someone who enjoys puzzles or birdwatching or fixing bikes. Something less fragile. But no, I'm still devoted. Against all signs of return. Devoted like a fool. Last week, my freelance client ghosted me after 4 rounds of revisions. Vanished. No payment. Just gone. I filed a complaint through the platform, but I won't see a dime. And I'd spent 10 hours on that project. Slept 3 hours one of those nights because I thought I was finally building a portfolio that might open a new door. I was furious. Not just at them, but at myself. For caring. For trying. For not seeing that this is how it goes more often than not. So, I did something stupid. At 2 a.m., I uploaded a digital collage I made last year to a print-on-demand store I abandoned ages ago. No marketing, no hashtags, no expectations, just posted it raw. The title? Still here, somehow. I didn't even think twice. Next morning, I had 2 sales. Just 2. One in Minnesota. One in Berlin. But you would have thought I won a Pulitzer the way I screamed into my pillow. It wasn't about the money. Not even close. It was about the idea that someone somewhere saw it. Felt something. Spent real money, tiny, sure, but money to own that feeling. And it freaking wrecked me. Not in a bad way. Just, I broke. I sobbed over my phone screen like a maniac. Because it reminded me that I'm not imaginary. That this thing I carry, this blurry, unkillable ache to make something true, it transmits. Even if barely. Even if through pixels and accidents. Rowan called it a flare. I like that. A flare in the dark. Maybe no one finds you. Maybe it's just light disappearing into black. But maybe, not always, but sometimes, someone sees it and sends their own little signal back. I don't know what 2 art print sales in the middle of the night are supposed to mean in the cosmic scheme of things, but something in me shifted after that. Not a huge shift. Not life changed overnight, or whatever. Just like when you tilt a painting 2 degrees, and it suddenly feels more right. I started waking up earlier. Not to be more productive, but to sit on my crappy fire escape with instant coffee and look at light hit the bricks at just the right angle. Sounds artsy and useless, yeah, but it helped. Like my body remembered how to notice things again. One morning I noticed moss growing in a crack down on the sidewalk by the dumpster. Bright, almost neon moss pushing up through concrete. I don't know why, but I couldn't stop staring at it. This stubby, persistent green thing clawing toward the sun in the ugliest corner of the block. That's what I mean when I say something shifted. I wasn't just surviving the day anymore, I was paying attention again. I even started drawing during delivery downtime. Waiting outside buildings, stuck in traffic. Little torn sheets in my glove box, quick studies of hands and fire hydrants and strange shadows. Sometimes I scan them later when I get home and forget why I drew them in the first place. But the motion helps, like stretching muscles so they don't forget what they're for. I know this all sounds romantic, but most of it still sucks. I'm still broke. I still work 3 jobs. I still haven't made rent on time in 4 months. I still lay awake wondering what the hell I'm doing with my life. But I don't feel invisible anymore. That's the only way I can explain it. 4 months, maybe even years, I felt like a ghost inside my own body. Like I was haunted by the parts of me I used to believe in. Now, there's at least a foot on the ground. And then something else happened. There's this guy named Matteo who runs a local zine fair once a year, a mix of artists, poets, weird collage kids, self-publishers. I tabled there 2 years ago when everything felt slightly more doable. He emailed me out of the blue last week. Said he remembered my Muted Scream Girl series, which I made during an especially brutal depressive spiral after a breakup, and asked if I had any new stuff that might fit this year's theme. Quiet rage. Which is almost too perfect. At first, I hesitated. Because what new stuff? What fitting work? My hard drive's a disaster, my website stuck in 2021, and most of my quiet rage is just red scribbles in the margins of my planner. But then I remembered this newer piece I started unconsciously, just this repeating shape of a window, over and over, slightly distorted each time. I don't know where it was going, but it felt like a trap scream, if that makes sense. I scanned it, cleaned it up, didn't edit the weird parts that made me nervous. I called it Apartment 3B Exists. I emailed it at 2 a.m., hit send, and immediately regretted everything I've ever touched artistically, ever. But it was too late. It was out there. Matteo messaged 2 days later. This made me stop scrolling. Damn. He offered me a half table and a feature in the pre-show write-up. I didn't even respond right away, because I was afraid I hallucinated it. When I told my mom, who, for the record, once said my art was very mysterious, dear, she paused and then asked, so, do you get paid for that? I laughed. Not because she meant it unkindly, but because that question sits at the heart of all of this, doesn't it? Do you get paid for it? Does it count if you don't? Is it worth doing if it doesn't put food on the table? I didn't have an answer for her. I still don't. Sometimes I think the real art I'm making is just endurance. I'm decent at pretending I'm okay around my coworkers now. I laugh at the right dumb jokes. I say things like don't work too hard, while dying a little inside because I do work too hard, and it still doesn't carry me. But in private, I breathe easier. I know I have something else now. Again. Still. Last week, a coworker, a quiet kid named Lena, who processes deliveries, caught me sketching a half-done portrait of someone on the train. She asked if I had a page or something. I waved it off at first, said, it's just for me. But she looked so genuinely curious that I gave her the link to my tiny, dusty portfolio site. 2 days later, she pulled up my page during lunch and said, your stuff feels like being lonely, but soft. That came out wrong. I mean it as a compliment. I almost cried into my noodles. Because what the hell? That's all I've ever wanted. Not even money. Just resonance. Just someone who sees it and goes, yeah, me too. That little bridge. That click. The show's in November. I probably won't sell anything. Or maybe I'll sell one print to an ex-colleague out of pity. I'll probably be standing by my half table making awkward eye contact and pretending I don't care. But I'll be there, with my hands on something that came from the part of me I thought I lost. And honestly, that's enough. For now. It's not a solution. This isn't one of those glow-up stories where I go viral and quit all my jobs and get flown to Berlin for a solo show. I'm still hustling, still rationing groceries and Googling bus delays, and crying in stairwells some days. But it's less lonely now. Because some weird stubborn part of me decided, if I'm going to burn out, I might as well burn doing the thing that cracks me open. I don't have answers. I barely have clean socks. But I do have this stack of half-finished windows and a candle that smells like pencil shavings, and somehow, in the mess and exhaustion and broken prints and bounced payments, I think I'm still alive in there. And that has to count for something. The night before the zine fair, I almost didn't go. I know, how anticlimactic is that? I had everything packed, prints, a card reader that may or may not work, my old tablecloth that smells like soup from the storage closet it lived in, and I still sat on my bed staring at it all like it was a pile of debris from someone else's life. I kept thinking, what if nobody stops at my table? What if they only stop to be polite? What if someone I don't know likes it and then I still go home alone and broke because, yeah, it's good, doesn't pay the electric bill? I wish I had some epic inner monologue that turned it around. I didn't. I just sort of stood up, put on the shirt that makes me feel semi-human, tied my boots, walked out the door. The zine fair was smaller than I remembered, but warmer somehow. The kind of space that smells like paper and glue sticks, and those little cups of free cider someone's aunt donated. People sat on the floor flipping pages, laughing, leaning too close to read artist statements. My kind of chaos. Rowan showed up even though he said he might not. He brought me a sandwich and made a show of framing my first sale like I'd just won a teen art competition. We laughed so hard I almost forgot I hadn't slept. His presence reminded me that even in the years we didn't talk much, art kept us in orbit, like a string neither of us fully let go of. That whole day was surreal in the most mundane way. People actually responded to my stuff. Really looked. One woman bought 2 prints and said, "It feels like my blackout year in my 20s, which is arguably the best compliment I've ever gotten and also mildly alarming. But the magic moment? It came late in the afternoon. This teen walked up, maybe 17, maybe younger, wearing the kind of eyeliner I would have worn if I'd ever been brave enough. They stood in front of apartment 3B exists for a full 5 minutes without saying anything, and I tried not to hover, tried not to ruin it by being too aware. But right before they turned to leave, they said, "I didn't know you could make a thing that feels like how I feel." And just like that, boom, my lungs forgot how to work. I said, "Thank you," or something equally insufficient, because what do you say to that? That's the whole reason I've been dragging myself through this emotional salt mine of a path for years. Not the money, not the status, not even the praise, just the transference. That silent, flickering moment where your private ache lines up with someone else's in just the right shape. I wrote their words down in my notes app, then in a notebook. Then I texted it to myself, just in case. I needed it in multiple places. That sentence has become a kind of personal gospel. Later, when the show wrapped and I packed up, I counted what I made. It wasn't rent. Not even close. It wouldn't fix anything concrete. But it was more than I expected. And not just in dollars, in faces. In the slower than usual browsing. In eyes that lit up with that I needed this look people don't always know they're wearing. I walked home that night because I couldn't sit on a bus after a day like that. I needed the air. Tired as hell, feet screaming, prints indented into my palm. I just wandered like a kid after their first concert. The kind of tired that means you did something today even if nothing changed. I passed a new mural going up 2 blocks from my apartment. 3 artists were still working under floodlights, laughing about something I couldn't hear. One of them had a baby strapped to their chest. It made me stop, just stand there and take it in. And I realized, I don't want to give this up. Even if it's hard. Even when it feels like the stupidest possible choice for a survival plan. Even when my parents say things like you could still go back to school with that half-hopeful tone that feels more like giving up on my dream for me. Because here's what's true, what I can't unknow. I feel most alive when I'm building. Not building wealth or a reputation, but moments. Lines. Pages. Prints. Bridges. Whatever connects me to that frequency, where I'm not alone in how I see or feel things. And I know now that balancing passion and survival, it isn't about splitting evenly. It's about shifting weight as carefully as you can without collapsing. It's messy. It's never even. Some days it leans all the way into exhaustion. But sometimes it leans into joy. I still deliver groceries. Still do client work. Still scrub clay. But I also still draw. That matters. Maybe not to capitalism, but it matters to the moss between the pavement cracks in my life. The soft refusal to go cold completely. So, no, I haven't figured it out. I don't have a patron or a viral following or a 5-year plan. Hell, I don't even have health insurance. But I have a notebook full of smudged little windows and a stranger's voice in my head saying, I didn't know you could make a thing that feels like how I feel. That's enough to keep going. For now, that's enough.